Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. Now, one of the great punishes of podcasting is the fact that people have different phones and not all links work on all phones. You might not know this, but if you have only been sharing your iTunes link to your podcast, then anybody who is looking at your tweets or your Facebook page or your website on an Android phone will click that link and end up in internet purgatory. That's right, iTunes links don't work on Android phones and Google Podcast links don't work on iPhones. So how do you share your podcast to everyone? This is one of the great perils of podcasting, and when there are so many Android users out there and when they are such a small percentage of the podcasting audience, there is such a huge opportunity to get your show in front of Android users and also just to not pee them off. Like, I'm an iPhone user and I can't imagine how annoying it would be if you are on an Android, which a gigantic proportion of the population are, and you are only seeing iTunes links. So today I wanted to take you through a few of the ways that you can share your show in a way that everybody, no matter what device they're on, can check it out. The first is a simple share to your website. Now, for a while, the conventional wisdom was to not do this because people were thinking, well, the more times you have to click or scroll, then the more chances you are going to have that you're going to lose your audience. And all of that is true. You want things to be as simple as possible when you're sharing your show. And I'm going to give you some options later on in this episode for just one-click links. But this can be a really good way to share your show if you have things set up on your website well. If you shoot people to your website, it's great because you're getting traffic to your site, so that's fantastic. But make sure if you are sharing your website that when they get there, it is so easy to click a big play button or to see where they can listen to your show so they don't have to go scrolling through and searching through back pages and desperately trying to find it. Because if they get to your website and it immediately looks too hard basket, they'll be out of there and you'll lose them. So you want to make sure if you are going to share your website, then that experience is really seamless for them. And when they get to the URL you point them to, they can find things super easily. The second option you have is a site called Podnews, podnews.net. I will put links to all of the things that I talk about today in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at podschoolpodcast.com. Just search Universal Link in the search bar there. Podnews has a search bar on their site and you can search for your show and it will pop up and it will tell you whether you're in Google Podcasts or whether you haven't set things up appropriately. And it will also give you little podcast app icons for all of the other places that your show is featured. So you can use that as a universal link as well to share so that people can find your show on other platforms. You can also do that with your podcast host. So I know Omni.fm have a really great show page where you can put all of the links backstage to all of the places that your show is found. And then on the page for your show, it has all of those little icons that people can click on. So that can be a really great way to share your show as well. Just check what your podcast host does and whether the show page might be a really simple way to share your show. Again, make sure that it is really easy when people click on that link to find exactly how they listen to your show. There's also a website called Smart URL where you can input different URLs that you want a user to be sent to depending on what country they're in or what device they're on. So you could choose to send them to the iTunes page if they're on an iPhone and the Google Podcast page if they're on an Android. So that can be really helpful as well. So check that out at Smart URL. Again, all these links will be in the show notes. And then finally, I just want to tell you about a website called Play Podcast. It's playpodca.st. Again, links in the show notes. This is what I use. You pay a bit of money and they actually create you your own URL. So the reason that I like this is that both of the URLs that I have for my show have the show name in the URL. So it's not just a random collection of numbers and letters. It's actually Play Podcast /Podschool. So you can go on there and apply for a link and they will create it. And then what happens when people click on that link is that if they're on an iPhone, they'll get taken to Apple Podcasts. And if they're on an Android phone, they'll get taken to Google Podcasts. So that is a really simple way to share your show because basically people just click the link and and it automatically opens on their phone. And for me, that was exactly what I wanted, because any of the friction that I can remove from that process is really great. It's really amazing to know, especially if you are a podcaster and you've been listening to podcasts for a long time, but there are a lot of people that still don't have a clue of how to listen to podcasts. Even if they've got an app on their phone, which pretty much every phone does, they don't know how to access it. So the easier you can make that process for them, even if you share your website as your universal link, make sure when you send them there is all the education that they need to find out exactly how to listen to your show, no matter what phone they use. I hope that's been helpful. Thanks so much for listening. If you want a little bit more assistance with your podcast, you can always head to podschool.com.au and sign up for my online podcasting course. I'll see you next week, and until then, happy podcasting.
That's all for today.